Hello, everybody, and you are very welcome to Successful Perspectives. Successful Perspectives, of course, is when we deep dive into the topic of leadership with one of our members from our very selective network, Boardroom by EMIR. I'm delighted to be joined on this occasion by Tarek Marawan, who is Vice President for Middle East and Africa at dormakaba. Tarek, it's wonderful to have you on Successful Perspectives, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Trevor. Nice to be here.
As you know, Tarek, this conversation is around leadership. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know you in recent years. And I feel like I have a sense of who you are as a person, but I'm always curious from your own perspective, trying to analyze oneself, which can always be a difficult thing to do. How would you define your own leadership style or the central tenets of your leadership philosophy?
Well, one of the main tenets of my leadership philosophy is consistency and flexibility, and I combine these together for a reason. I strive to be consistent in the way that I act and behave internally with our staff, but as well externally with our customers. My team needs to know what to expect from me and what I expect from them. This happens through consistent communication. When a leader is inconsistent, people wait to act and hesitate sometimes. This obviously comes at a cost to the organization. But along with consistency, I add that a good leader needs flexibility, especially in the fast-changing economic and social environment that we currently operate in. Flexible leaders are able to adapt and modify their styles and approach in a response to the uncertain and unpredictable circumstances. And we know that in this region, we don't have any shortages of that.
And on that flexibility point, which I love, as we have come out of the pandemic era, and we hope we are emerging on the other side of it. And when you think of flexibility, I guess you took some lessons away in terms of flexibility through the pandemic. How did you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, that comes along with resilience, and with, you really needed to react quickly, have a sense of urgency in how you operate and change certain dimensions within the organization and the structure and how we work on a day-to-day basis. Had to make some quick decisions, change what needs changing as quickly as possible. Don't allow issues to drag on, resolve them and move on quickly. We just needed to have as much as an efficient and effective as possible structure to avoid waste time and energy.
And did the pandemic, or just in general as well, but I assume the pandemic would have kind of forced this period of reflection for many of us. Did it force you to reflect on your leadership philosophy, or is that something you do on a consistent basis, that you try to look at oneself and say, oh, am I performing? What areas can I do better on? How often do you reflect on this?
Honestly, I don't have a set schedule for reflecting, although I probably need to consider doing it. It happens kind of when I'm put in certain situation that really drives me to reflect on the situation and there are tough decisions to be made. I don't know if you remember, but when one of the first times we met, you introduced me to meditation and Headspace, the app. I don't know if you remember this or not.
I do. It was a long time ago now, but I do.
Yeah. I found that. I mean, first of all, Headspace didn't work for me. It maybe gave me a jump start, but then I did a meditation retreat for a weekend, and I kind of think I figured it out, and that helps me a lot. I kind of had an epiphany of a sort, figuring out how to do it, but I think I picked it up, and that really addresses a lot of work issues that I have. It helps me reflect on a lot of things that happen at work as well.
I'm so delighted to hear that, and I think it's interesting. You sparked a thought in my mind there that it resonated with me. The way you said Headspace didn't work for you personally, but you went for a retreat, and then you figured out your own personal way of doing it, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I think there's no one way per se of doing it, but it's more how you allow your mind to accept that process. And once you can, it becomes really quite effective. You know, it really, as a lot of people say, it makes you maybe 10% better. I find if I meditate and I work out, meditation makes me about 10% better. My workout makes me 10% better. You know, these aren't earth shattering changes, but 20% improvement every day adds up to a big compound aggregate gain. So I'm really happy to hear that. In terms of your success as a leader, how do you measure that?
Well, a lot of times I measure it through the feedback I receive from trusted colleagues or peers or a manager. Um, Many times it's through my gut, but ultimately it's probably through the outcome of the situation.
And in terms of the the progress that you see in terms of your team over the years, that must be something that you take great satisfaction from, I assume.
In my current role, I've been with dormakaba 5 years. The team has, I mean, we went through a lot of changes, a lot of instability in the beginning, but in the last few years, it's been a very solid team. We work really well together. We got to know each other really well. It's went through a lot of, it was a bit of a roller coaster ride in the beginning, but we finally reached a point of stability and having a lot of things in common to work, align, collaboration. And it's going really well. Now, actually, we have a retreat to Ras Al Khaimah next week for 3 days that we're just going to put together a vision for the next 3 years for our business.
Nice. And was that first period, that roller coaster period, was that at the beginning where you were trying to, bed down exactly who is the right team, what is the right strategy? Was that why that early stage was a roller coaster ride, and then you bedded those things down, and you created a sense of team within the organization, or talk me through that?
There we went through before I joined, there was a merge between two companies that put a lot of instability in the organization, merging two organizations together in the region. There was a leader before me that made his changes. When I joined, there were people that I was able to work with. There was others that really didn't have the same mindset, the same values as I did. So we went through some time to almost clean up the situation for me to be able to lead the organization in the way I felt was right. So that process took some time to build a team that worked that I was able to work with and feel comfortable working with.
Did it take a long time? Was it, from your own personal point of view, how challenging was that to get right? And how long did it take from the point where you knew something had to change, where you knew, okay, this isn't exactly the way I need this to be, and then to the point of where you've got it to where you want it to be?
It took longer than I would have hoped it would take. There was pressure and a sense of urgency from my boss to get things going, but I had to do things in the right way. It's not a matter of, okay, coming in within weeks or a month, changing people. I need to give people a chance to get to know me, for me, the chance to get to know them. Some things were very obvious from the beginning, but I also didn't want to jump to conclusion. I needed to give it some time so I make sure that I'm making the right decisions, because it's not a matter of we aren't talking about pens and paper. We're talking about people and their futures, and so that probably took more time than even turning the business around. Just
Interesting.
getting those are more difficult decisions to make than business decisions for me, because they impact people's livelihood.
And that's a big part of leadership. I'm curious, would you have seen yourself as a natural leader, maybe when you were, starting out in your career, you thought, yeah, I have those leadership traits, or is it something where you felt that, no, that's something I'm going to have to cultivate within myself?
Difficult question to answer. I do believe that every person has a bit of a natural small leader in them, you know, and this small leader develops and grows through problems, struggles, challenges, sometimes chaotic situations like they experience. And eventually, with time and experience and a lot of mistakes, a small leader evolves. So to answer your question, yes, I had probably a small leader in me that grew and continues to grow.
And once that small leader came out and you recognized that you're clearly effective at doing this, what stage in your career did that realization come along?
It came along when, as I became moved into more senior roles, and I started managing people, and the people would come with problems and weight of issues that they have, and they, after meeting with me, they would leave lighter, feeling better about handle situation. And when that happened more often, I kind of realized that, hey, I think I got something. I kind of know how to deal with people in a certain way to get things improving.
I think we've had in the past, and I'm speaking collectively here, but we have in the past, we had a perception of what a leader should be. And I think now modern leadership has evolved to such a point that I think some of the perceptions we had of what a leader, who a leader should be, has turned out to be they're not often the best leaders, right? The ones that I think historically in the past, it was a sense of somebody that was very, very maybe charismatic, but also sought out the limelight, was quite forceful, quite loud. And now I think there's this evolution. I know from these conversations that I've had, I've spoken to lots of leaders of different organizations, and some of them saying that my own personal traits or characteristics wouldn't have fit with that old sense or style of leadership. And once I realized that actually that old style of leadership isn't necessarily so successful, it allowed me to be more of myself, which turned out to be more effective. Does that resonate in any way?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it resonates not necessarily with me because I don't feel that I needed to change how I was to become a good leader, but I see it with people I work with that are kind of stuck in this dilemma because maybe they're brought up in a certain culture that they feel that I need to be this way to be successful, but their heart and mind tell them that no, I need to be a different way. And I see it with a lot of people from maybe different cultures that they have that issue. So it's a bit of a fight, you know, in their brain.
And I guess another thing is when we talk about this evolution of leadership is in terms of the impact that leaders are expected to have today. There's the impact obviously on the culture of the business, but also on society as well. What's your take on that? How comfortable have you become with that? Is that something that you thrive and you actually enjoy, that there's this added responsibility, or how do you find it?
Well, of course, you know, strong leaders today have a great responsibility towards the society, and creating a positive impact on the society they live in. First, because it's the right thing to do. Improving the quality of life in your society gives a special kind of satisfaction to a true leader. It's always easier to wake up in the morning and go to work when you know you're making a positive impact on society. So satisfaction comes when your work has a purpose rather than having, when your work has a purpose that gives a positive impact on the people around you. Secondly, successful leaders now need to have a bigger purpose besides financial success, which is maybe how it was in the past, especially if they wanted to get the attention of their employees and the customers. It needs to be a powerful a purpose that's exciting. That's why you see a lot of companies creating purpose statements that can drive motivation of employees beyond the paycheck that they get at the end of every month. And this is something also, I mean, I'm going through right now because the company I work for just created a new purpose statement for the company a few months ago. And the way I look at it, I mean, the company purpose is it's like a non-financial incentive or a bonus to some people. I work hard. I feel accomplished because I'm benefiting my society, and I'm also being paid for it. So, like, can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah, but the problem is that a lot of cultures, a lot of people, some cultures and people don't understand this concept, especially the older generations. But we're getting there. We see a lot of younger generations. This is becoming, very important for them. So it's something that we're working through to change the mindset of the people we work with.
I think you're dead right. At our last quarterly session, this was one of the topics we tackled, and that came up consistently, that the younger generation coming up behind us is even more driven by this, and to the extent that they will, decide which organizations they're going to work for based on issues like this. And if anything, purpose trumps everything else, or at least that's what some of the early research shows, and at least from some of the organizations, the tech businesses in our network, that seems to be a lot of the constant feedback they get from these younger generation. Speaking of the younger generation, and one last question, you've been very gracious with your time. What advice would you give when you think over the course of your career, and you still have plenty of success ahead of you? I'm not writing you off here. But when you think over the course of your career, what's some of the best advice that you feel has served you well in most of the situations you find yourself in?
The best advice I received, and it was actually discussed and iterated during our last meeting as well, the concept of the safe spaces. So the best advice I received was to create a work environment that makes people feel respected and supported. This environment will allow employees to flourish professionally and personally. Give the opportunity for employees to share ideas, ask questions, address concerns without fear. So ultimately, this helps the organization confront and deal with toxic dysfunctions. And if everybody treats each other as a person that matters rather than just a worker, employees will feel secure, hence improving morale and the overall life-work balance of the employee.
I love that. And what does that look like in day-to-day terms? Is that a case of every meeting, every team meeting that's held, this is brought to the fore, as a topic where we're encouraging everybody to open up around certain points or issues? Or is it in meetings? Is it bedded into the culture, into the values? How do you do it in such a way that it moves off just being, a nice thing for corporates to talk about, and really embed itself into the culture of the organization?
Some of the things we do at the beginning of the meetings, at the end of the meetings, check-ins, check-outs, they help. But I personally believe it's part of the culture. It's driven top down from the leaders of the organization. It's having the right people that you work with, hire the right people, the right talent, the people with the same values that your company has. That all helps drive that environment.
Tarek, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Nice to catch up. I'm very, very happy that I managed to coax you onto the meditation team. I've done that with quite a few of our members now. And that was a big, that made me very satisfied when I heard that. So, but thanks for joining us. Nice to see you as always, and I appreciate your time.
Great, thanks, Trevor. Appreciate it.